All right, so let me just get started. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining this event. My name is Ujjwal Gandhi, and I represent a company called Spatial Thoughts. It's going to be an exciting hour. We have a lot of people joining us today from all over the world. And we have a lot of interesting presenters. A few things about logistics. Let's just use chat as the primary communication medium. If you have any issues or need to ask something, please use chat. Keep yourself on mute all the time. And I'm recording this event, so we'll make a video available to you later on. We have a packed agenda. I'll start with a brief introduction about me and the speakers and the panelists. We'll go through the presentation, which is what the event is about the GIS industry in India. And then we have 4 panelists representing different segments of the industry who's also joined us, and we'll kind of get the perspectives and do a Q&A. And then we'll kind of continue taking questions and continue the discussion until end of the hour. A brief introduction about me. I come from a traditional GIS and remote sensing background. I did my master's from the US, and I was lucky enough to get hired at Google right after graduation. And this was in the early days. Google Maps had just launched in the US. There was no Google Earth. And I got to see the whole kind of changing of the industry firsthand. And later I moved to India and started the Maps team here. I worked for almost all of my career there, and worked on various geo teams there. I was always interested in the education space, and I witnessed firsthand while working at Google that the needs of the industry and the kind of skills that are being taught for GIS and remote sensing, there's a big mismatch and there's a gap. So I recently started my company Spatial Thoughts to address that gap. I'm completely focused on training and trying to bridge this gap between the traditional GIS and remote sensing skill sets and the more modern spatial analysis. I'm also a visiting researcher at University of Johannesburg. I teach urban planning with GIS. A brief introduction about gisindia.com. Many of you would have seen this site. It's been around for a long time. And this started as kind of a hobby project when I moved to India, and kind of transport yourself back to like 2006. There was no Google Maps in India. There was just GPS was new, location services and mobile were just taking off. And there was kind of rapid development going on in the industry. So I was curious about who are the players, how things are shaping up. So I started collecting the data about what are the companies in the space. And there was nothing like that existed on the internet. So I just published that as a wiki page. And I've been maintaining that ever since. And this grew to be a pretty large database. And I recently kind of revamped it and put a nice interface that you can use in search. It'll be useful to just quickly show you a demo of that. You can just search for GIS companies in India, and you end up on the site. It's called gisindia.com. And this site allows you to search for companies and organizations specific to your needs. Say you are looking for GIS companies in Bangalore who have drone expertise. You can search for that, and you'll get results for the companies that operate in that space. Similarly, you can look for, say, training institutes in maybe, say, Delhi, NCR, who give LiDAR specific training. And then you'll kind of find those companies here, and you can learn more about them, reach out to them. It's a completely open database. You can use that. My entire kind of database was split into 2 segments. There's a sister site called gpsindia.com, which deals with telematics companies and also the eGPS survey companies. So you can look for that database in this site. If your company is missing from here, you can feel free to submit this listing, and I'll be happy to add that here. So before we go ahead, I'm getting some feedback. Kindly mute yourself so we can continue. So I want to introduce Dr. Althaf now. He's an assistant professor at National Institute of Technology, Calicut. I've known Althaf for a while now. He used remote sensing and spatial data while doing his doctoral studies, and that's how we met. And he teaches MBA students, but he brings in, he also introduces GIS and spatial methods to them. So quite interesting there. So I would ask Altaf to introduce the students.
A warm evening to all of you. We are a few faculty and students from National Institute of Technology, Calicut, are quite interested in geospatial, especially the analytics end of it, from multiple departments in from civil engineering, from architecture, and from management studies. So we are quite enthusiastic about creating an ecosystem where there is substantial research about geospatial. But in our department, we were quite interested to know what is happening with respect to the markets, the industry of geospatial GIS-based systems. So that's how when Ujjwal is a long-time friend of mine, and when he actually pitched about this idea of doing a market research on GIS, we found an enthusiast set of students, Revathy and George Nindrinaj K, Amal Kumar and Vishnu Prasad JS, who are enthusiasts in analytics part of it and also in the strategy and finance part too. So they actually came forward, joined Ujjwal for an internship for the last 3 months. So it is happening from last April. So this has been quite a great experience doing this. I'm just a passive participant outside. It's more four of them working in coordination with Ujjwal and building a database, and from there creating a sort of like a primary and secondary data research on it. So over to my students. And before that, I would really like to thank Ujjwal for this opportunity and for this awesome webinar experience for all my students. I think that would be a pitching pad for them to let the world know what they're really interested in. That is geospatial analytics and strategy-based research. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Altaf, for the intro. We'll go through the students would introduce themselves when they are presenting. So let's just move on. I want to introduce the panelists. I'm really excited to have four of my industry colleagues here with me today. They all have a unique vantage point because they operate in a slightly different segment of the market. So it's really interesting. Whenever I had chat with them, I learned something new about the industry, and it'll be good to get all of them together, and we can have a very interesting conversation. We have Mugilan from Skylark Drones. He is a co-founder there, and he's one of the leading drone service company in Bangalore. He's a great team. I know their team very well, and a really great company. We also have Gautam from Kainos. They are based, they were incubated at IIIT Hyderabad. And Gautam also, his company does really interesting work in the space of water resources, and they've been applying machine learning to remote sensing imagery and doing a lot of interesting work. I also have Guru Datta with us. He's technical director at a company called Aaron GST based in Bangalore. And Gurudata is a close industry. He watches the industry quite closely, and he's also super technically enthusiastic in LiDAR. So we'll love to get his perspective on the LiDAR processing industry and how that's been affected in the current times. We also have Dhruva from Geospoc, and Geospoc is a analytics company, and they also have really interesting products, and they offer services which are kind of taking the traditional GIS data but offering in a much more interesting way. So we'd love to hear his perspective as well. So let me just give a background on the project a little bit. This was, since I had this database of GIS company, we thought, let's just take a fresh look at the industry based on the data. So the work that I assigned to the students, and it was kind of an open-ended question that, can you look at this data, do some background research on the industry, and take this data, clean it up, augment it the way you want, try to segment, slice and dice, and see if you can find out any trends and learn more about geospatial industry. And this is what they ended up doing, and we'll hear from them about what they found. So with that, I'm just going to hand over to them, and we'll start the presentation.
Hi everyone. Uh, Hi everyone. I'm Revathy. I'm a student at NIT-Calicut MBA doing my master's in concentrating on marketing and finance. My interesting fields include analytics plus market research. So in this presentation, we are going to show you what we have been researching on for the past few months as doing internship in Visual Thoughts. In this work, my contribution was mainly towards the SWOT analysis and the service distribution analysis. The contents of the presentation is as follows. And without any further delay, let us start. The application of GIS is limited only by the imagination of those who use it, said a visionary who founded an organization that pioneered in shaping the GIS industry to what we see today. India's footsteps into the geospatial industry began when we launched our remote sensing satellites, and that was basically for getting a map database. And later on, when the technology got advanced towards computers, internet, and big data, we came across spatial analytics for decision making, and it is one of the most promising sectors as of now. Currently, we are moving towards what we call as the next generation GIS, which is an intelligent geocomputation platform, which is more easy to use with decision-making capabilities. So we have done a small qualitative analysis of the industry in the form of SWOT analysis, which states the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats in the industry as understood by us while going through the company list that we have got. So basically, we have identified two strengths. The first one is spatial data infrastructure. India's investment in the IT and related field has led to advancement in the technological framework, including spatial data infrastructure. With the players of multinational players, government policies, and private parties, we are now able to capture, store, and process huge amount of data. GIS can be incorporated with new age technologies like IoT, AI, blockchain, etc., which is enhancing the back-end business processes. Plus, the government is also undertaking a lot of projects in the urban planning, utilities, and other areas so that we are increasing the market is on a growing stage. There is also an increasing global demand, which many of the companies in the Indian markets are tending to. These are the three weaknesses that we identified. Though the government is improving the geospatial policies and all, we still lack a uniform policy, data sharing policies among the organization or departments in the GIS sector. And this sometimes is hindering the growth of data economy of the country. As we have seen during our analysis in the companies, we saw that we have a very few hardware companies in India. This is actually, which makes us that most of the companies have to import their equipments from abroad, and this is adding to the cost of overhead time and money. Shortage of qualified professionals. As per the NASCOM report in 2018, we have seen that this GIS sector is employing less than 3 lakh employees. And when compared to the other similar sectors, we find that this is a very small amount. And this can be basically attributed to the fact that in the education system, we don't have much GIS courses or trainings, and there is a lack of awareness among the professionals regarding the opportunities in the GIS market and regarding the technology. Next, we'll go towards opportunities. So, India is actually, we are one of the leading users of internet and mobile phones. So this opens up a window of opportunity for internet-based GIS solutions and data sharing. Then, as stated earlier, since this GIS can be easily integrated to the ERP systems, many companies are actually selling it along with their IT systems like customer relationship management, management information system, etc. And this is actually leading to a product and service diversification in the industry. From improving the customer service to improving the efficiency of a supply chain management, location analytics is actually playing a very big role. And this is actually bringing in new business models into the industry. And we can hope we are seeing a lot of applications in this area. As a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat, lately, self-reliant India, our finance minister has announced that they are going to liberalize the policies on geospatial remote sensing data sharing to the tech entrepreneurs. This is actually going to help the industry in a in a huge manner. Then threats. For the past few decades, the industry has been witnessing a lot of disruptions and advancements in terms of technology. And this was actually brought in by technological companies rather than core GIS companies. So in the market, we can see a cutthroat competition between the two. And it's actually, the core GIS industry has to cope up with it in a very, updated manner. And India is actually one of the major exporters of services in the international market. And competing with India in the Asia Pacific region is China and Japan, which have the same penetration rate of GIS as similar to India. And if we tend to fail or we tend to delay in adopting the technologies fast, we might lose in the international market. So this is actually the industry that we have seen in a nutshell. And I invite Nitin, Vishnu for the further analysis part. Thank you all.
Thank you, Revathy, for explaining what we call as the crux of our research is all about. Before starting, let me introduce myself. My name is Vishnu Prasad JS, and I'm a student from NIT-Calicut. My interests are in the field of data science and analytics, and this interest pulled me into this research group. Now, let's address the first probable question everyone would be asking: what we did in this research. When we started as an intern in the Spatial Thoughts under the mentorship of Untitled Chapter, he gave us a large data set of GIS companies in India, which he has been maintaining with lots of enthusiasm and interest for the past 8 to 10 years. He had made a dedicated website for this called as GIS in India. And what he asked us to do was to analyze the data set and come out with some interesting analysis and market trends that we can be drawn for the GIS industry. Now, coming to our methodology, we adopted for the analysis. We started with the basic and the most important step in the data analysis, that is the cleaning of the data and filtering of the data. There were like 800 plus organizations listed in our data set, and for filtering purposes, we followed along each of this listing and viewed the websites, analyzing their area of operation, collecting the useful aspect, and finally filtered out only the core GIS company. I'll tell you once more that we are only filtering on the core GIS company that are operating in this area. Then, as the next step of our completion of our data set, we have gone for the companies which we missed out in the earlier calculation by depending on one of the largest LinkedIn group of GIS person in India that's maintained by which was in his LinkedIn page GIS in India and operated by Spatial Thoughts. We utilize this platform for getting more number of companies to our list. And finally, we reached out several other companies for clearing all those inconsistency and missing out data in our data set. After having a complete data set for analysis, our next question was, how would we be analyzing this data? To address this question, we gone for several background research on GIS industry and finally arrived at 5 different attributes that we think would be the best example of each of these GIS organizations. The first attribute that we had gone was the segment this GIS organization belongs. Based on its applicability, GIS organization can be divided into 5 different segments. These are mainly service segment, software segment, hardware segment, education segment, and the data segment. Coming to the service segment, it includes all those organizations that provide final GIS service solution to its customers. The software segment includes those companies or organizations that provide software solutions for several GIS applications. And comes the hardware segment. This includes the companies that design and manufacture hardware components for GIS service or even just hardware-related services. And then we have the data segment, which includes those organizations or data vendors that runs and maintains the databases and can be used for several GIS analysis. And finally, we were having the education segment, which included all those training institutes that offer separate GIS training courses. And that was about the 5 different category or division of segments that we use. And for the next classification, we run was based on the employee number in the organization. Based on the employee number of each of the organization, we classified this organization into 4 different groups. That is, less than 10 number of employees, 10 to 100, 100 to 500, and greater than 500. After employee number, next we analyze the location of each of these organizations to get the general distribution of GIS countries all over the country. Finally, we classify the companies based on their specialization. The specialization we use are the technological solution that the company provides for the customers. The slide shown now on the screen actually explains the different types of specialization that we use in our analysis. We use the traditional specialization like photogrammetry, LiDAR, remote sensing, and even the modern BIM and UAV. And that was about the 5 different classifications that we used in our analysis. And these were actually the stepping stone for further interesting analysis on the market trends and other related aspects that we have done for which we'll be discussing we're done for our analysis. Okay, further about this analysis will be discussed by friend Nitin in the coming slide. So now we're handing it over to Nitin for giving an interesting view on all those analyses.
Thank you, Vishnu. I'm Nitin. I'm interested in finance and analytics, and I actually did the company size analysis and the major consolidation of report. And now we'll move on to segment-based analysis. And actually, we had full data, and we actually gone through the website of all the companies, and we identify all the services that they offer, and then we categorized them into 5 different segments. And these are the main 5 segments that we identified, that is service, data, education, software, and hardware. And here we can see that service sector is the one that is dominating, while the hardware sector is actually very small when compared to all other segments. So now let's okay. Now let's move on to the growth of the service segment. So here we can see that the growth actually starts from 1990s. So it is because actually the India actually started realizing the importance of GIS at this time. Also, it was at this time that India actually launched the remote sensing satellite, first in satellite. And also we have to note that at least at the time of 1980s, the liberalization and the globalization actually happened. So there is regulation actually on the regulation of the market actually started reducing, and the market became more free, and actually more and more outsourcing that started happening. Also, different MNCs started setting up their branches in India. Also, all this actually contributed to the growth of service segment. Also, we have to note that India is actually a service sector economy. So this also facilitated the growth of service segment. Now let's look into the specialization distribution. Let's look into details. So these all are the services that we identified by going through all the companies' websites. So here we can see that remote sensing, mapping, photogrammetry, LiDAR, all those are actually having a greater, having greater market share in compared to all the other services. So because all those are actually the industry pioneers. So all those are those have been there from the beginning itself. So that is why they have grown so much. Also, we can see here that there is a utility service that is having a market percentage of like 9%. So the services like planning for electric lines, wastewater ducts, telecommunication lines, all those are actually included under the utility segment. So actually it is having it is showing a growth in the market. It is picking up. That's why it's showing a share of 9%. And when we move into some of the hardware segments like UAV and other segments like BIM, that is building information modeling, it is actually having a more advantages that UAV, using UAV, we can survey data in less time. They uses fewer natural resources. UAV actually have superior reach and dexterity in data collection, etc. Also, BIM is actually nowadays used in construction industry instead of CAD. That is why they are actually growing. Now we have seen the service segment. Now let's move on to some other segment like data segment and training segment. Also, we can see that the training segment is actually increasing. It is having the similar growth pattern as service segment, but not that much. It is because actually more and more government organizations are under the curriculum, and also the GIS companies have started providing GIS courses. That is why we can see the growth. And now moving to the hardware and software segments. Actually, hardware and software segments are not showing that much growth when compared to service segment. This is because for a company to start a hardware-based services, it actually needs a very high initial investment. So as India is in developmental phase, actually there is a small difficulty in bringing that huge investment, initial investment. So nowadays hardware segment is not that growing, but not big, but it is actually growing. So we can take it as a positive aspect. That is, if somebody is willing to invest in this hardware segment, it is actually promising. So it is having huge investment opportunities also. So also for a software segment, actually, these are not Indian companies. Actually, this is the Indian branches of international companies. So again, there is a huge opportunity in hardware and software market. Now let's look into the size of company, that is company size analysis. So we actually consolidated all the data, went through the different company sites and social media sites, and we actually sorted them based on the employee number. And we found that actually we categorized them as four categories, that is medium companies, large companies, very large companies, and large companies, medium-sized companies, very large companies, and large companies. So we can see that the medium-sized companies are actually more when compared to all the other, and at the same time, the very large companies are very less in the GIS market. So now next we'll look into the more and more what are the GIS companies, big large companies in India. So for that I invite Amal to continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Nitin. I am Amal S. Kumar, currently pursuing MBA Majors in Finance and Systems from School of Management Studies, NIT-Calicut. From the inception, I was always an integral part of the team, and I had to filter huge data on our hand, and I'm the one who created distribution of GIS organization across the country. Here, I will explain large companies in GIS industry. These big companies, we again divided into publicly listed companies and unlisted companies. From our research, we found that only 4 companies are publicly listed. As you can see, we tabulated these companies. And on the other hand, from our analysis, we shortlisted 19 unlisted companies which have a significant role in Indian GIS industry. We tabulated these companies and we found that most of them are multinational companies and some have Indian origin. For example, Rolta, Seacon, and Magnasoft. However, some are international players like ESRI and Here Technologies. From 800 plus organizations, we filtered into 363 GIS organizations. After that, we got interested in that what might be the distribution of GIS organization across India. So this is the distribution of GIS organization across the country. Couple of things we understand from the distribution is that Delhi NCR, Hyderabad, and Bangalore are the 3 regions where majority of the organization are concentrated. Apparently, Delhi NCR constitute 26% of all the GIS companies in India. We believe that because these 3 cities are both IT hubs as well as metropolitan cities of India. So if they start their companies in this region, companies may get more investment opportunities. This might be the reason behind this pattern. Also from the illustration, we can see that majority of the companies are distributed across southern part of the India. Apart from private sector, we also gone through government initiatives that would benefit GIS industry, such as the Digital India. It is a flagship program of Government of India with a vision to transform India into digitally empowered society and knowledge economy. Location analytics form a major part of it. Next one is National GIS. This would form a platform to facilitate the use of spatial data by various e-governance. And the third one is National Resource Data Management System. It supports many programs like revival of village ponds, GIS training courses, health GIS, etc. It has district level data centers aimed at developing GIS application on an industry level. Next one is Survey of India. It is a principal mapping agency providing detailed topographical data for the entire country for various processes. The next one is Regional Remote Sensing Centers. It established to solve the remote sensing task, provides assistance to various segments such as agriculture, water resource, forestry, and oceanography, and so on. The last one is Bharat Maps. Base mass surveys aimed at helping departments for establishing GIS-based system for planning, monitoring, developing, and implementing visualization applications. This 3 months journey was challenging for us in different ways. Even though we put our maximum effort to this project, and we believe that the final result will give you a comprehensive picture about GIS industry in India. This study showed that areas like survey sector are booming, followed by educational sector and hardware sector. The growth of educational sector showed that more and more trained professionals are created by GIS training centers across the country. Industry experts said that GIS industry will grow at a CAGR of 30.8%, but due to this corona pandemic crisis, there is an ambiguity regarding that. However, all these recent improvements in the industry point to the fact that Indian GIS industry is growing at a rapid pace and is promising industry for the investors. Thank you all.
Right. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to the presentation. Thank you everyone for presenting your results. We'll, if you have questions, do put them in the chat. We'll, we have plenty of time. We're doing good on time, so we'll have time to take them on at the end as well. We'll move on to our panelists now. I want to start with Mugilan. And maybe I want to hear, especially since Mugilan is his company is part of the Make in India project and one of the few hardware companies in this space. I would love to hear more about that and your perspective, and maybe if you have any insights or quick feedback on the presentation. So Mugilan.
Can you guys hear me? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, first of all, thank you, Ujjwal, for giving me this opportunity to be part of this amazing group of people. Right. Coming to about Skylark. Skylark is a drone platform company. We've been building a lot of applications for specific industry sectors, right from solar, mining, agriculture, and so on and so forth. Right. We work very closely with drones. We work with regulations to help the Indian policy to move forward with respect to no permission, no takeoff, and also working to democratize drones across various sectors, right? And also get insights from drone data, right, for various sectors. That's where we specialize in. Right. In this journey, of course, in the past we had built drones. We also built no permission, no takeoff for all the other drones per se. That's about a quick introduction about us in general, right? So on to the presentation. I think it's a fantastic job. I think there's a good amount of research that went to bring out some key facts about the GIS industry in the country. Of course, I think one of the key things is to also get into various industry sectors per se, right? I think there's a lot of things that we can learn if we get into the nitty-gritty of insights with respect to industry, because GIS is a very large and vast field, right? So it can be dilutive if we go on a very high level, right? Some of the core insights, especially spatial insights and things like that, can be well understood if we go into specific sectors and specific fields. Right. So that will, enable a lot more, greater depth in understanding. I think JS, once we expand that scope, I think the market size will be even larger and bigger from where we are today. Right. So that's about my 2 cents on the presentation. But otherwise, a great job. I think well assembled, well researched, well thought through work, right, of the GIS industry in the country, right? Of course, I think our closing thoughts involve basically like you guys rightly mentioned, software space is, software product space is something which is untapped in this country. I think as I guess most products have just started, software products, SaaS products in this country have just started to take off, right? Which includes from fintech space to the entire HR, the entire management space. Right? I think GIS is also, coming very close to taking off, right? In the near future, SaaS products actually will, GIS-based SaaS products will actually take off, I believe, in the next 5 years time, right? I think the right time to invest is right now, and I think that's a very exciting space to be in. Right, so that's about my thoughts, Ujjwal.
Yeah. Thanks, Bogdan. I think that's a very well said. And regarding the kind of the scope of the industry, there is definitely, as we see that a lot of the innovation is coming from other companies who are using geospatial technology. So the market, the definition of the market can be expanded much wider. And for this study, it was kind of limited to the core GIS market, but that's a point that's worth studying, how other companies are applying geospatial and in different segments. So that's a great feedback. We have a question for Srijit, which might be relevant for you. He's asking, is the lack of investment in GIS hardware due to high cost compared to other industries? And who are the collaborators of a GIS hardware company? Maybe you can give your thoughts on that.
So I think hardware generally is, different with respect to, different, across the board, right? It is not something which is specific to GIS. I don't think India has done a great job with any electronics manufacturing, right? And so at least with respect to drones, and I can expand it to other, with respect to other, DGPS instruments as well. The core electronics, the batteries, everything has been mostly manufactured outside the country, right? We don't have, specific manufacturing capabilities of the core, core semiconductors, or even the assembled units of batteries and things like that. So once that happens, it becomes almost impossible to actually make in India. They can only assemble in India at best, right? And once you can only assemble in India, then you're talking about only cost arbitrage, right? And which basically means we are already in a back step with respect to China and other, international markets, where it's easier when they build core components in their own, ecosystem. Right, so that becomes the challenge, and that's one of the reasons why we are always, behind in terms of hardware in this country. Of course, there's other manufacturing issues, but at the core, this is the reason why I believe this is the reason why we are not able to get it. I don't think capital alone is a constraint, right? Capital will come if there were, if there's a business that can be established here. I think even the large players, even the people who can possibly invest, are not investing in hardware today because of these reasons, right? It's just not, not possible, economically not possible to do it, right? So that is, I think, is the larger part of the problem.
I think, thanks for that. Let's just move on to our next panelist, Althaf. Can you turn on the video? Yeah.
Hi, Ujjwal. Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to hear from you anything that stood out for you in the presentation, and would love to hear about Kainos and the kind of projects you're working on.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Ujjwal, and hi everyone. Uh, and the presentation was really a very good detailed study of the industry. They've done really fantastic work, the finance graduates. So one thing that I liked is they've listed out all the different segments that are there in the industry. Um, and as they rightly pointed out, the major segment in GIS at the present is service. And there is a lot of scope for India in creating more and more services, because we do not have, or rather, most of our inventory systems are traditional or legacy based systems. They have to be brought onto digital platforms, and things like water pipelines, electric cables, or phone optical fiber cables. All these have to be digitized and have to be brought into the digital platforms, and there is a lot of scope for those kinds of providing those services, mapping services in India, and major companies are in that domain at least. So then coming to Kainos, we have been working in this asset management kind of a environment for mostly for governments, either directly working with governments or working as a collaborator with some other organizations for government. So for governments, the sets are probably lakes, dams, canals, which are spread out across various large geographies, and managing them manually is a challenge. So we help them create those inventories using satellite data and manage them, plan the, say, new canal constructions, or do some rejuvenation works in water resources. So that is our main focus area. We also work with several other players on uh, some research kind of a thing in indoor mapping, and then moving asset mapping, uh, whether it's indoor or outdoor, or mostly in confined spaces. So we work with those kinds of companies in that. So that is what Kainos is about. And we also do a lot of open source related workshops. We internally use a lot of open source and open data to deliver all our solutions, because that provides us a good scope to actually deliver POCs faster. We don't rely on the client for data or any software licenses. So that is where we started using open source and continue to do so. And then I think
Yeah, there is
we,
a question that maybe I think you touched upon that. Amol had asked a question. Making GIS data is very costly, and GIS software is very costly. So what do you do about that? So
yeah.
if you touched on open source and kind of using some tech to derive data, but I would love to hear more.
So that's what we use a lot of open data, or only open data as of now. Even we started working on geology related works to actually suggest governments onto where to construct check dams and what to do with Manrega funds. So there's a lot of funding available in Manrega, and planning is such a difficult task. So we are trying to get this data to the actual planners there to do a better work in planting trees and constructing check dams. So open data is really useful.
So let's just move on. I want to introduce Guru Datta next. Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. It was a good presentation by the MBA students. It gave a good bird's eye view on how the Indian GIS industry is evolved so far till date. So before I jump into my views on the presentation, I'll just give a quick introduction about myself. I'm from Bangalore, and I have about 15 years of working experience in the GIS domain. Based on what we just saw in the presentation, I should say that I belong to the traditional GIS school. So a bulk of my experience has been in the domain of LiDAR. So I have had working experience on international projects. Basically, it was on data processing side. And I also have some brief experience in the domestic projects. Apart from that, right now I'm working as a technical director in Aron Geospatial Design. So we are basically focused into providing consultation for specialized domains like LiDAR, 3D, CAD, and photogrammetry. This is basically our core focus right now. Now, coming back to the presentation, there were quite a few pointers in the presentation, which was something to be taken notice of. What I saw is that in the previous decade, if you cross compare the growth of companies from the previous decade to the present decade, the services companies have almost doubled. But when you look at other domains such as hardware, software, and education companies, they have not caught up that well. So it gives the impression that most of the services companies are also investing time in training candidates. So they do a recruitment and they're training the candidates by themselves. And what actually happens with these services companies, a bulk of them are in the traditional GIS sector. So what actually happens in traditional GIS is most of the work is manual based. Say if I have to speak in terms of LiDAR, much of LiDAR work, there will be classification of LiDAR data. And so people will have to be trained on this because LiDAR, to the best of my knowledge, so far, there is no academic courses that teach students about what is LiDAR and how LiDAR processing is done and things like this. So also, we don't see much on the educational sector of companies if there are any companies that do impart training on this line. So this is something that has to be looked into. Apart from that, what is also happening at the international level, what I see is there is a lot of research happening in terms of bringing in cutting edge technologies into handling some of the monotonous works, which are the core component of traditional GIS. When I started my career in GIS, most of the project was just you take a satellite imagery, digitize it, and prepare a base map out of it. But today, what I understand, this kind of work is quite possible by implementation of deep learning and computer vision algorithms. So the same thing, what I also see is getting slowly introduced into the LiDAR sector. So there are computer programs, especially deep learning computer vision programs, which is possible to classify LiDAR data. So when this is happening, if we just take this as a benchmark and try to see what happens with the workforce which is in the services industry, because a bulk of this workforce, they are doing basically classification or a mapping kind of a work. So how do we tune this workforce? And what I also saw from the presentation and the report is, majority of the companies that have come up in GIS sector post 2015, they're all into this new trends such as analytics, cloud, and these kind of activities. So what I see is there is some sort of imbalance created when it comes to skilling of resources. One is we have to think about how the workforce in traditional GIS industry can be scaled up to match with this new trends. And what is also necessary is some sort of a standardization in training of people. There should be some sort of a benchmark saying that, okay, if so-and-so has undergone a particular level of training, then when they appear for interviews in the industry, the industry does not have to train the candidate again. This way, it will create a more balanced way of working with the workforce. Apart from that, what I also feel is the policy framework. So there is a need for policy framework which caters towards a win-win scenario. The industry is also benefited, and at a global scale, the government is also benefited. A lot of things has to be done in the domestic market so that different segments of companies, whether it is software, hardware, services, all these things are able to cater to the domestic market. So once we become very sustainable in the domestic market, gradually it will have a spillover effect on the international market, and definitely we can as a country dominate the international market. That's it. These are my views.
Yeah, thank you for your views, and definitely training is something that I deeply care about, and education, and we have talked a lot about this, and this is what trying to address this skill gap. But there's an interesting question that's come up that's relevant to you. Gurneet asks that how is LiDAR and 3D market in India? Can you name a few government private companies making use of LiDAR 3D data in India?
It's a good question. I would want to give a bit of a backdrop here. Sometime in the beginning of this decade, I was involved in some mobile LiDAR test surveys. We were actually trying to prevail upon few clients to show them how LiDAR is going to be quite handy compared to traditional surveys. That was much earlier to the current NDA government. And then in 2014, when the NDA government came into power, they brought a particular rule, especially for national highway projects. They said that there is a need to speed up national highway projects, DPR projects, by introducing mobile LiDAR technology as a mode of data collection. So when that happened, quite a lot of traditional survey companies ventured into mobile LiDAR market. I believe that could also be one of the reasons when in the presentation there is a particular slide which talks about the split of services company, and it shows LiDAR as a major component. So a lot of domestic projects in LiDAR started happening. And I see one of the people attending this, he comes from a company called Geono. I also worked in Geono. Geono is one of the market leaders when it comes to LiDAR data collection in India. They have got LiDAR data collection equipment for airborne, mobile, terrestrial, and everything. So Geono is a big market leader in it. And there are also a few other companies like Genesis, which also is into data collection sector. But predominantly, when it comes to government, I think NRSA is into a lot of LiDAR data collection, but still it is a catching up trend, because one key aspect in LiDAR data collection is the equipment, the laser equipment. It's quite expensive, and there is no Indian manufacturing as far as I know. But same time, I also sense this could be an opportunity if at the academic level, multiple branches of engineering, that is electrical, electronics, computer information, they all come together and try to come up with some sort of a make in India solution. For example, there is something called a Garmin Light LiDAR 3 or something. It's a very small component laser emitting device, which can provide a decent range of LiDAR data collection. Maybe these kind of equipment should be encouraged as student projects in academic section, and maybe they can come up with some sort of a model, and this can slowly be scaled up into a proper working industry solution.
Okay. Thank you. We'll come back to you, and there are a lot of questions coming up. I now want to introduce Dhruva, and Dhruva is kind of at this intersection of spatial analytics, as well as they are one of the few software product companies. I would love to hear, there was a lot of references made to that, so I would love to hear your views and maybe learn more about what GeoSpoke is doing.
Yeah, thanks, Ujjwal, and hi everybody. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. Really great job, guys. I think it's been a long time since I've seen a comprehensive report on geospatial in India. You keep seeing these reports in the US and the UK. I think a really good initiative, and we have to continue this, right? One of the things I would say is, we should update this after a couple of years, definitely see how things are changing. So, as Ujjwal, as you rightly said, so I'm the CEO and founder of GeoSpoke, and I think one of the comments made by Revathy was, startups in GIS started around 2015, have focused on this neo-geo, and that's exactly what we do. So we focus on this, geospatial 2.0, so which is basically using all of the large data sets that are available through IoT, through satellite imagery, and build tools, and as Ujjwal said, a platform to consume that data and also derive insight from it. So we're totally on the software side, and we're tackling various sort of problems from agriculture to banking and to retail. And one of the comments I had when I looked at the report was actually the market segmentation did not have the verticals usage that you often see, right? So you look at government, commercial, utilities, that kind of split. So it'd be interesting to see how that is changing over the years. So one of the things that at Geospark we've done is sort of stayed away from government work. So we don't do any government work, in India or abroad as well. And therefore, a lot of people are surprised as to how we are building a company that is able to deliver value to commercial enterprises like banks or insurance companies. And the good thing to say is that these things are, these entities are approaching GIS in a very different way because they're able to experience mapping, on their mobile phones using Uber or Zomato. And so people understand the value of mapping. And I think that has helped us sort of get into commercial applications of geospatial much faster than what would have happened before. And in terms of the wider perspective, I think there are a couple of things that I wanted to mention. One was, ISRO released this upcoming policy of opening up data. And I think that's a very sort of interesting space to look at. One of the biggest challenges I found is that the Indian government isn't very forthcoming in releasing data. And I think Gautam spoke about open data, right? So, for example, USGS has so much data, whereas Bhuvan is still catching up, for example. So I think one of the biggest things I would look for is how the government bodies can make data and APIs open, so that we can build on that and create information products out of that. And I think the government is taking a step in the right way, but I think that's another big gap that we need to catch up with other nations. The second one, which Revathy spoke a little bit about, was industry academia partnership. So the need for research and development projects to be driven by industry requirement, but then fulfilled by the academia and students working in research, because it takes the rigor of research to really crack a problem, like for example develop a LiDAR sensor in India, or even create a more better spatio-temporal database for a region like India, or because we have probably the largest population in the world shortly. So when this kind of scale is not experienced anywhere else in the world. So, and I was talking to Hotstar a couple of months back. They have 300 million active app users on their platform. That's the population of the US, right? So the scale that we operate at is totally different from anywhere else in the world. So there are a lot of industry challenges, and I think that industry academia connect is another thing that we need to encourage. And I think Ujjwal, you're doing a fantastic job in sort of at least getting people trained up and looking at geospatial, but I think we can take it a step further. So those are my sort of opening thoughts.
Okay, thanks for that. I think we are kind of short, coming to the kind of end of time, but I think we have a lot of questions, and I have a lot of questions for the panel. So it'll be great if you can just stick around and maybe extend it for 15 more minutes. But if you need to drop off, please do so. I'll make the video available so you can catch up on that. One question that we kind of I want to pose, and it's from Gagandeep, is that he wants to know what are your views on which specializations are more promising for the future? And this is also something that I had in mind. We have a lot of students in the crowd. So what would you say, what should they focus on, what kind of skills they would build, and what should they consider for their career prospects? So we'll start with you, and then we can just go around.
Sure. So I mean, I'm biased because I'm a software guy, so no offense to the hardware folks, but I would say that learning having the ability to build web maps, having the ability to consume content via programmatic APIs is definitely key, because that's the way you're going to be able to consume data and build applications, right? So I think one of the core areas which I see is that there's a lot of GIS knowledge that's there, but often I interview people and say, sir, I don't do any coding whatsoever, right? Which is okay at a certain level, but I think more and more, and I think some of the panelists alluded to it, like you're not going to have to digitize manually anymore. You have to write a script to be able to get the data from the imagery that's there. So I think some level of comfort with coding is definitely something I would add.
Anybody else wants to address that?
Yeah, for me, probably statistics or some mathematical ability is also important, because there's lots of data. Getting out what is needed and what to present to the end user is also becoming very challenging. So probably we have to focus more on maths as well. Maths and programming is something that a new GIS person needs.
Yeah, great.
Well, I would want to add a general point here. Yes, technically, a lot has to be learned. Traditional concepts also have to be understood. For example, if I have to say to know what is the limitation of LiDAR, one has to have a good background on what is a traditional survey and how a traditional survey works out and why LiDAR is important in certain categories and why it is having a limitation. So all these things, to appreciate it, there is a necessity to have traditional survey background also. In addition to that, key point is to be able to communicate. There is a need for students to have this communication skill, especially when they go to an interview and things like that. They should be able to tell what they actually know. And they have to have that confidence that I know this and this is what I am capable of. So most of the time, this communication thing sort of gets left behind when other technical activities take the front row. So it's very much important that people build their communication process, especially say they have to work on projects outside India. So communication plays a major role. In my career, I have had the experience of working with the French, and sometimes there can be a mix-up of certain crucial words. There was one occasion where my client was trying to say that he had a comment, but he used the word compliment. And you see the whole line of thinking in the project changes. So communication is a key point which I would stress to many people who come to me.
Yeah, great. And maybe Mugilan, I know I would love to hear what you look for when you hire folks. What kind of skills you're looking to have in people.
Well, I think on the panel actually covered most of it. So I think one of the like I think all everyone said. I think programming is definitely a key, and of course basics, fundamentals are another key. Right? We at least we typically look at how much first principles can people can really understand and go on. Right? Of course, there are skills and there's a thought process of the skills itself. Right? Skills can somehow be learned in one way or the other in say about 3 months, 6 months. But I think the thought process is much more important. Like how fundamental can you go and how do you build up your thought to the the solution per se. Right? So design thinking is something which is very important. So I think from that standpoint, that's more or less it. Right? These are skills independent of the field, right? But these are skills that we typically look for when we hire people. Right? That's about it.
So Pratiksha has a question. What's the future of drones for agriculture application? And a larger question to the panelists, like agriculture is seen one of the kind of major areas where geospatial technology can kind of transform that. So I would love to hear on what you see from your vantage point where agriculture industry and geospatial can intersect. But we'll start with the drone question. What do you see the future of drones for agriculture?
So actually it's so the point really becomes the potential is huge, right? With respect to drones and agriculture, from a technology standpoint or just from a use cases standpoint, there's so many things that we can potentially do, right? Right from yield estimates, individual plant or crop, plant health detection, soil analysis. So many different use cases are there around agriculture, right? And agriculture keeps, every week a new data has to be collected. So essentially, you need to use drones. There's no other way of doing such rapid data collection, right? And we have worked with Syngenta, we have worked with other plant yield companies like who used to basically grow plants. We used to give them accurate plant counts, like literally say that 35,000 plants are there in this 1 acre of land, right, or 1 hectare of land, right? So that's how accurate you can go down when you come to drone data, right? You can individually identify plants and individually count them, which couldn't have been done ever before. So use can be done. I mean, these can be used for crop insurance, can be used for agricultural protected income for farmers. So many different things. Having said all these applications, the biggest challenge right now is the fact that Indian farms are small. Right, Indian farmers are not the best, in terms economically well off. Right, so it becomes a real challenge on implementing these use cases at scale. Right, in India today. Right, because there are so many different other challenges that farmers face today that this might not be their top priority. Right, for of course for insurance companies it can be a good priority because they have the this thing. For maybe the seed companies it can be a priority, but for the average farmer might not be. Right, so that's where we stand with respect to the market acceptance of these technology across, at least in India. Right, because the average area owned by a farmer in India is about 1 acre or 1.6 acres or something on those lines. Right, not significant enough for from a scale standpoint. Right, so that's about drones in agriculture per se. Right, I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, that's good. And I want to add a slightly different perspective. I've been working with a few drone companies, and you are exactly right that the end customer is not the farmer. It's the other company that is kind of relying on either crop insurance or monitoring, or there are agriculture trading companies who make use of this data. And there are a lot of people who have kind of reached out saying, we have working in the agriculture space. And we want to apply geospatial. And again, this comes to skilling and kind of requirements they have. A lot of this company said, we need people who can understand this remote sensing data, but since we need to monitor very frequently, we need somebody who can build the pipelines, can do the detections, and can help us do this on a regular basis. Right? So that's the kind of skills that are required. Though you need to understand remote sensing, but you need to have those skills to be working in this space as well. So definitely build up on your programming skills, building those pipelines, applying technologies to extract information out of image automatically, and those are very relevant to that. Any other panelists want to talk about agriculture in geospatial? All right. So I have a question for the panelists, and I think it's in the back of mind for everybody. That we are in the midst of the pandemic crisis, and there's a lot of things that are uncertain right now. So I want to kind of understand how do you see this COVID crisis playing out for your business, for the industry, and what are the steps you are taking to deal with that? So maybe if you can get a few perspective on that, that'll be interesting.
Okay, maybe I'll go. So I think, right from the beginning, I think COVID has actually propelled geospatial to the forefront. I think the fact that everybody's looking at maps on news channels, on social media, on your Twitter feeds. I think really there's never been a time where people have been so just talking about maps, right? Where are containment zone? Where is infection spreading? Oh, is it in this city? Is it in that city? So I think from a awareness perspective, COVID has done a lot for geospatial in general. And I think Esri, of course, being Esri, have really, popularized how, geospatial technology is being used to fight COVID. Having said that, I think it obviously has had an impact on some of our customers. Luckily, we don't have customers in tourism or airlines where that's been the most sort of badly hit. But we do have customers in banking and insurance and, lending who have been hit. So I think the economy will recover, and I think slowly things will get better. But I think the broad themes of, digitalization, the whole thing of people working remotely, all of that leads to themes of remote monitoring using drones or satellites, or being able to do analysis on your digital twin before you're able to actually go on the ground and take measurements. So all of this is leading to better sort of applications for geospatial. So I see it as a very positive momentum for geospatial companies, especially in India where digital adoption and digital data has not been readily available. I think now people will start to realize the value of having that digital data being available. So I think that's both good and bad. Right now it's a little slow, but I see it definitely picking up.
Yeah, I think interestingly, I just today saw on Twitter that the few of the cities have released their ward boundaries and hospital data as an open data, and that has never happened before in India, right? But the COVID has forced people to release this kind of data openly, and hopefully, kind of this serves as a kind of inflection point where people are more willing to share the data and make it more openly available.
Yeah. Coming to our business as well, if I divide our business into two sectors broadly, mapping and monitoring. Mapping part has slowed down because people are unable to go to field to do surveys. So that is where some data collection happens. So that has slowed down construction sector especially. But monitoring is continuing. So those where we had deployments where data is flowing remotely through IoT or satellite, that part is continuing. But then in a country like India, things have to move on and they'll move on. So things will definitely become better. So those are my views for sure.
Gurudatta, you want to add your thoughts?
Yeah, it's like it's a very tricky situation. The world needed a COVID kind of a scenario to appreciate the importance of GIS, and same time it's the same COVID which is impacting a whole lot of GIS companies, especially when you look at traditional GIS. It's quite tough for companies in the traditional arena to shift their work base to work from home kind of a scenario. If I have to talk about LiDAR context, the core thing in LiDAR is the bulkness of the data. So when you are having a team working in an office, the transfer of data from user X to user Y, from a production chain to a quality chain and all these things is much easier because you are doing it on a high-end networking system. But if you shift this whole cycle to a work from home scenario, so you are dependent on the internet connectivity. And this is going to take a whole lot of time. And as Gautam said, data collection also gets hampered because people cannot go out in the field due to the lockdown scenario and crowding cannot be done. So in a bigger picture, it has a very big impact as far as fluency is concerned. But this is something we have to battle it out, and maybe also time to explore new trends, new technologies, and see how it can kind of shortcut the current workflow and try to overcome it.
Great, thanks. So just in the last 2 minutes, I have a few more questions, so we can quickly answer that. Gurudatta, there's a question on, can LiDAR technology be used to extract BIM models of buildings?
Yes, it's quite possible. There is a lot of companies doing it, but I'm not very sure at an Indian context how many are doing it. But when you look at a global scale, a lot of work is happening as far as BIM is concerned based on LiDAR. Predominantly, it makes use of terrestrial LiDAR data to generate such models.
Great, thank you. Teju Kumar is asking, can crop mapping, crop growth, moisture stress be monitored more reliably, and we can develop a subscription-based model for consumers? Is there more reliable crop mapping that helps water managers plan utilization? So anybody wants to take that?
So I think this goes back to the point that Mugilan made, was that, for example, we do a lot of work in the US around, looking at crops, and their average, acreage is like measured in square kilometers. So I think to the end customer, if it's a farmer, I think very difficult at this point, because simply the scale and resolution as well as the challenges that exist in, the agriculture sector is different. But in terms of whether you can measure it, I think there are many companies. Cropin is an example, Bangalore based, right? So they're doing a lot of models around. There's a lot of agri-tech investment also that's happened. I mean, this Omnivore is a VC that only invests in agri-tech companies, right? So I think there's a lot of progress being made, but I think the consumers of that product is still, as Mugilan rightly said, it's insurance companies, seed companies, aggregators, union cooperatives, rather than the actual individual farmer. So I think delivering it to the customer is an economic scale rather than a technology problem.
So we are just out of time. I want to thank everybody for participating. Thanks to our panelists and our presenters. It was a great discussion, and I feel like time just flew away. We could just talk for another hour, and still learn from it. So we'll definitely do this again at some times. It was really great having you, and thanks to the participants and for the questions and coming to this. So Please stay in touch. I would reach out to you again with the video recording. I'll upload this, and you can share this video recording with your friends and colleagues, and definitely be in touch. We shall do something like this again soon. So thank you, everybody, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Ujjwal. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay
Thank you.
safe.
Thank you all.